If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Central Valley Talk. My name is Ray Johns. I'm your host, and the name of my show is Voices Not Yet Heard. And like we say every week, we hope that your voice will be heard today. We hope we can be that vehicle so that voice can be heard. If you're watching me now, I want you to know that I'm live. If you watch it a little bit later, it will be a rebroadcast. You know, I've said this before, and I felt that it's apropos for me to say this again in lieu of what's happening. You know, about 154 years ago, Abraham Lincoln made this statement. He said, let's return this government back to the channels in which the writers of the Constitution first intended it. Now, let's think about that. This country wasn't even 100 years old, and already government was infringing upon the rights of the people. Does that sound a little bit familiar as to what's happening today? Let's fast forward about 133 years, and Ronald Reagan said, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. Now, let's fast forward another 33 years. Donald Trump said, let's return this country to the will of the people. You know, a lot of things have happened the last few days, and I've thought about the media and Donald Trump's talking about rigging, how much that has happened, and it's true. This election is rigged. The polls are wrong. They're liberal. It is, and now all of that is coming out. Donald Trump reminds me of the Great Secretariat. Now, I don't know if you saw the movie. When Secretariat got to the top of the stretch in the Belmont Stakes, which was the longest race, and that's the one that a lot of people win the first two, but they lose the Belmont Stakes because of the distance. When Secretariat got to the top of the curve, heading home, the announcer said, Secretariat is surging. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is surging. And I'm so happy because I have back with me today, and we're going to hit you really, really hard. We have 12 days, ladies and gentlemen, until we step up to the plate and make that great decision and put Donald Trump where he belongs, into the White House. So, Gary, welcome to the show, buddy.
Good to be here, Ray.
Really glad to have you.
Good to be here.
A lot of things have happened now.
Well, I like that, which is talking about Lincoln. For one thing, back then, I don't think anyone at that time realized that America government would become as corrupt as it is.
Of course
right
they
now.
didn't. Yeah, they were less than 100 years old. You know.
I mean, it was like an honor. They told you to run for. Well, they had to come to you and ask you if you'd run for Congress
Absolutely.
and serve your country, not get rich off your country.
Those people weren't even paid.
Well,
most of them were farmers, and you know,
and some of them lost their farms for that.
Absolutely.
But it was a duty no different than a draft in the Army.
Talk about dedicated Americans. They were.
Man.
You know. Now they're all getting paid.
Oh my God!
And not just getting paid, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, for instance, Hillary Clinton made $250,000. How in the world do you go from making $250,000, Gary, to all of a sudden having an excess of, say, $500 million in a foundation? How do you do, and more, as I understand it?
Well, what it just really gets me is how even not that long ago, people didn't want to run because it meant they had to give up their business, and a lot of them did sacrifice that.
Absolutely.
It was a sacrifice to do that. Now, you run for Congress and get elected, you come out of there a millionaire.
Of course, they all do.
And that's what they're running for.
And what have we got today? You know, that's a whole key thing about Donald Trump and the bureaucrats and the elite in Washington. Donald Trump cannot be and has not been bought, you know. So he doesn't owe any special interest. Hillary Clinton will be paying special interest for the rest of her life, whether she's elected or not.
Well, she might be paying out of the prison walls a little bit, but she got to have a new address, maybe.
I wonder how she's going to like that oatmeal in there. They don't give you any sugar or butter. I mean, it's just straight oatmeal.
But when you think about it from what it was then, and you mentioned that Lincoln years, and we go back beyond, I remember reading about Jefferson. Hell, that man lost his ranch. In fact, I think he did because
He eventually lost Monticello, remember?
That's right. And he had so many
Excuse
people
me.
would come after to visit, and he didn't get an allowance for. He had to come out of his pocket for that.
The man freed his slaves, and they lived there with him. He had to pay for that.
I mean, and then you go, how could he imagine that it would be like it was then, thinking it was going to be like that all along, maybe, to the point now to where use Hillary Clinton, become state secretary or secretary of state, and amasses millions and millions and millions in 1 year.
Unbelievable. Just absolutely unbelievable.
Her in 1 year alone, I've looked at it and said that she brought in $250 million that year alone.
25 million from Saudi Arabia, by the way.
I mean, all over. And so how do you get to that point? I mean, it has to break, right? And we're at the breaking point.
Well, you said earlier when, before we started, Gary and I usually get here and talk, and he came early today, as did I. And we're talking about how Hillary Clinton, I mean, there's no telling how much money's in the Clinton Foundation. There's absolutely no telling how much is there. It's astronomical. Some people say billions and billions, and that's probably true.
And the fact that she has been able to do that, with you might say another set of laws that you and I and anybody else would have
she's
been
above the regular laws.
I mean, look at the top secret thing, and we pointed out in one of the shows. Most people didn't think how serious that top secret thing and where it put the lives of Americans in jeopardy because of the code that could be hacked.
Sure.
And I know for a fact that was my job at one time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's all they had to do was that. And there's people that say, "Oh, well, I'm not worried about that." I mean, what are you worried about emails for? Listen, partner, I was out there with an AIM-26 missile about to shoot you off if you had the wrong code.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't care who you were, anybody that, or anywhere in the world.
We've made the statement on the show before that she sold the American people down the river for her own personal gain.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's exactly what the Clinton Foundation is.
And she's almost blatant about it, like she deserves it.
You mentioned, by the way, a long time ago that probably 7% of that money goes out for charity as intended, and they just stated that the other day. They said 6 to 7% of that money.
Right.
Well, the rest of it, ladies and gentlemen, goes right here,
Right.
in the HIP National Bank.
And it goes to pay people off so they get more.
Exactly.
And
It's a cycle.
Basically, they've got a tremendous warehouse, which is called the United States. It's all she does, just goes to the warehouse and starts selling this and selling
Like
that.
we said, how do you go from making $250,000 as a politician to have a foundation that's worth billions, literally worth billions?
Well, I think what let's get on that a little bit, but let's just think about it. I think that's what the point where we all, as citizens of the United States, and I don't care if you're illiterate or you're a genius, I don't care, and neither should anyone else. But the fact is, we're Americans, and we have to look at ourselves and say, "Wait a minute, something is not correct."
And that's what's starting to happen, Gary.
And that's what's going to happen.
That
is happening.
It
People
is
are waking
happening.
up.
I mean, like I said, he is surging. I found out this morning at 5 o'clock that he has cut her lead into half, and he's surging. Donald Trump is indeed surging.
Well, I've thought all along, and I've said it. We talked about it. I've said he's going to win by a landslide.
I think you're right.
and I still feel that way.
I think you're right. I do.
But
Forget the polls.
forget the polls. As far as I've seen how crooked that is.
Oh, my goodness.
And but
And they're just now starting to come out. The only poll or news media that halfway endorses Donald Trump is Fox.
yeah,
They're the
right.
only one that I know of.
Right.
And
the polls are rigged, of course, and it's interesting when you go to social media, and I went in there, that was this summer, and I found this group, and there were graduate students. And
we're talking millennials here.
yeah, we're talking millennials, and there was 13 of them, and they all belonged to different. They weren't all one political party or another. In fact, primarily they were probably Bernie Sanders more than anything at that time. But anyway, they got together, and they were different, different ones. But they got together and they said, "Let's do our own poll and let's divide the country up 13 ways. And
Oh, how interesting.
and you take so many states, and you take so many states, and we're going to poll 1,000 from each state. That goes for Alaska. That goes for
So
every
we're talking
state.
50,000, yeah.
So we're talking 50,000 people. Well, most polls only poll what, 400 or 500,
Yeah.
maybe 800 at the most. So they decided to do that, and they then decided to take the people they'd call from the registry. They called each state from the state registries. These are people that actually did vote.
Oh, my goodness.
They're not people walking the street like you see Wally World
Yeah, and they
and
just
all
come
that.
over and talk to someone. You're right.
These are people that actually voted, and this is their party affiliation, and that's how they voted: Democrat, Republican, or Independent. Right. And so, from that list, then they broke it down to third, and it took them about 3 weeks to get this done. As far as each guy had so many states to call, And it took them 3 weeks to get that done, and that was this summer. I'm going to say around July or something. And the poll came out 67% Trump, 19% Hillary,
Oh,
13%.
my goodness.
And I'm thinking, well, that doesn't add up at all.
And that's an accurate poll, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't
We're
know.
talking about an accurate poll.
I mean, these were guys that had no. They were not trying to grind an axe. They
No.
they didn't know what the outcome was going to be, And they're not like Republican club or Democrat club, and they just thought it was a project they would take on as part of their graduate work. Graduate students taking on a project, and that was the project they decided to do, and that was the result they got, and that was way back in July. I guess that's really when I first started thinking it's landslide, because I think the people are going to think more of themselves than what was being demonstrated at that point. And I make it this way, Ray: how in the world, especially now, when you know how crooked,
Oh, my goodness.
how criminal, and how incompetent Hillary Clinton is. Now, what's your justification that you want her for your president of the United States?
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, anyone with any mind that sees what's coming out. And let's talk about this for a minute. Let's talk about Obama. Let's talk about the emails. Let's talk about how he lied to the
Right.
people about Obamacare.
Yes.
Time after time after time again. I mean, starting with pre-existing conditions, and you know a lot more, and
Yeah.
everything else, he lied. And the other day on television, he said, I didn't, the first time I heard about it was when media people heard about it. And then the email comes out.
Right.
And she endorses this man. You're going to get 8 more years of Obama with Clinton. She endorses this president administration. What in the world does that tell you? People are starting to wake up to that, though.
Well, I'll tell you what, you wouldn't get 8 more years because the country won't last that long. If Hillary Clinton got elected with the amount of corruption that's in our government right today, and what is the game plan, it won't last. I don't give it 2 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I mean,
Talk about scary.
Well, look at the debt.
$19.5 trillion as of yesterday.
I mean, at what point? And look what her programs would do as far as expanding that.
they're
what
going to
she wants to
spend
do.
and spend and spend. I mean,
Think-
we're already over.
And think about the regulations, and you go into what is a communist-style dictatorship, which is her dream. She doesn't really necessarily care about being president. Well, she does, be president of the United States, but really her goal is to be president of the world.
Global president.
Because they're
yeah.
globalists.
Yeah.
She doesn't want borders. She wants all these immigrants. 550,000 more Muslims come in here.
Did you know that we have about 100 coming to Fresno, some of which I understand may already be here?
I mean, that's an
That
invasion.
scares me that
that's not
scares me to
immigration.
death. I can guarantee you, maybe not the 100 that's coming to Fresno, but I can guarantee you some of these people are going to be ISIS related.
Well, they're not. They're not coming here. I don't think. I imagine some are. They like America and they want to assimilate. Well, assimilation of America is one thing, as what most all immigrants did come over here to do.
With this present administration, we can't pay for the people, our own people.
And
Our
so-
own people are suffering. Now, these people are going to get on the welfare rolls. They're going to depend on the government. They have no choice. They don't have any money.
Well, they don't have any money and they don't have any choice. For one thing, they're not assimilating.
No.
Well, the opportunity when people first came to this country up until, I guess you might say, even, I'd say probably the 60s, people came in and had an opportunity to grow. Well, they still do, but it's not easy when you got the government. I'll give you an example. I got a lady who gets my hair. In fact, she's a black lady, gives me haircuts there in Hanford. It's called the Beauty Box. She's trying to start her own business and get going. She doesn't need the boot jack of Obama and Clinton on her neck. She needs to be
Absolutely.
poor thing. She's gone through all these things she has to go through that didn't have to go 10 years
I'm
ago.
familiar with it.
And
as
you're
a small,
familiar with
as a
it.
small
There you go.
businessman. The regulations are off the chart. They're incredible. I'm in the mobile home business, the used mobile home. It's a great, lucrative business, but we're stifled
There you
by
go.
regulations.
Yeah. And then whatever you make, Hillary wants to come along and she wants to raise your taxes.
Oh, yeah.
To pay for what? Well, to pay for what she wanted to give away to keep getting her elected.
Yes. Like you said, they come
Yeah.
around every 4 years with all the handouts, and then you don't hear them. And the people buy it. American blacks in this country, American Hispanics, poor American whites, they buy this every 4 years
Yep.
from these liberals. They
Right.
buy it, They buy the farm,
Right.
only to be left standing with the same problems that these people promise to cure.
They stay on the same plantation is what they do.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It's a plantation,
Well,
a modern day
And
plantation.
not a very nice one when
No, it's
you're
not.
talking about. What did you say the other day that how many blacks were killed in these inner cities and so forth?
80%,
Yeah.
80 to 85% of blacks killed in the inner cities are killed by other black people.
Well, Ray, let's just look at that for a minute and think about it. Okay, let's talk about the inner city. Now,
Okay.
you've
Good.
been in them, I've been in, but you don't stay there very long.
No, I'm driving through, believe
yeah,
me.
yeah. And it doesn't matter what color you are, you're
Yeah,
driving
I'm
through.
driving through.
But anyway, think about it now, and let's go back to slavery. And let's think about that. And there was a lot of stuff. I mean, just psychologically and so forth, it was just horrible, right?
Absolutely.
But nevertheless, you're on this plantation, and you're a slave, and it's been that way for however many years and generations at that point. But you're being taken care of, however it is. But there's nobody killing one another because you don't have guns,
yes.
and
And it's all you know.
and
So
that's all you know,
you-
right? They wouldn't let you have guns, or because they knew that where those gun bullets would be shooting,
Look,
and
what
it
happened,
wouldn't be each
look
other.
what happened with Nat Turner and John
Right,
Brown. I mean, exactly.
And so what happens is, and think about it. Okay, now let's see if we could put ourselves into a ghetto inner city plantation right now. Think how horrible that really is. Yeah, we get something to eat, and we got a roof overhead, which every faucet leaks, and I mean, it's just. And then you look at the.
And they dole them out an EBT card.
And they got we get something to eat, but we go down and look at the corner, and they're all unemployed, dope dealers, addicts, and you don't know if your little kid's going to get shot.
Absolutely. There's a great chance he will.
And good chance they will. And so you're trying now. Some of them get out of there, maybe because they happen to be athletically gifted or entertainment gifted.
Yeah, those are
But
the
it's
ones.
very difficult because they're not getting educated.
No.
The schools are rotten.
Absolutely. They're terrible.
Ray, that is indoctrination,
Of
not
course it
education.
is.
So where's that kid going to have an opportunity if he's been indoctrinated?
It's
with
a
this
cycle, and it
propaganda.
keeps going and going and going.
Okay.
You're right, Gary.
All right, now let's look at that plantation that we see in the inner city and with we described. And you're a slave now, back in those times. And now, but you get to vote, but your vote is going to be, you're going to
Predicated on
go to that inner city. You're going to be just like, and you get this video and you get to see what it's like 150 years later. And I bet there's going to be a number say, well, wait a minute, I think I got a little better where I'm at. So I mean, it's to the point where say, I'm free, but I'm free of what?
Yeah.
I'm not free. I'm stuck in this ghetto. Dope dealers, crime, shootings. I mean, it's hard to even imagine how trying to raise your kid, and you don't have a job. Everybody's jobless.
Do you know that they say 1 out of every 5 households, 1 out of every 5 households in America does not have anyone employed? That's a stat that just came in. And when you when you think about African Americans and Hispanics, it's even higher, Gary.
Well, of course it's higher, and that's it. I could see all of a sudden if I'm down there in that plantation in 1850 or something, and I get this video and I get to choose which way I want to go. I'm going to say, whoa, wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not so sure I want to go over there.
There's not much of a choice, is there?
So then why are you voting for that choice? Why are you voting for that?
That's exactly what we're talking about.
That's my point. My point is, had the blacks had the opportunity back then with a ballot to be free, they would have all chosen free.
And they have that opportunity right now. They do have a ballot. We do have a ballot.
That's right. Because the conditions, well, wait a minute, they come back and say, well, those conditions back then, sure, they'd vote free. Wait a minute. What's your conditions like right now? Is it really any different? I mean, come on.
No, it isn't.
I mean, in fact, you're living in not only in poverty, but you're living in fear. And you're living with idleness.
Yes.
At least those people had work, and there was
progresses.
And the plantation, they would raise things for themselves, and so the plantation owner would give them so much and this and that. Mm-hmm. But the point, I mean, it's awful. I'm not justifying it. You understand that, but you do understand. How do you justify today any black person voting for Hillary Clinton? I can't see it justified any more than it would be back in then that they would vote to be slaves.
I think you're absolutely right. There's no justification.
None. There's none. Where are you going to come from? Now, do you think you're going to starve to death if Trump becomes president? No, you're going to have opportunity.
And I think they're starting to wake up.
I do too.
I think the
too.
minorities, the
right.
The African Americans, the Hispanics, the poor whites, they're starting to realize how much longer is this going to go on? I mean, you've had years and years. It just didn't start with Obama.
No.
It started long ago.
I think in real earnest it started in the 60s.
Absolutely. Like you and I said before, when President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, and they said, oh, well, here's all this stuff we're doing for you. No, they were doing it for themselves because they knew.
He said it.
Yeah, they knew that they would have a generation upon generation of people who would vote for him. That's why they did.
He said, this guarantees us 200 years.
Of votes. Exactly. And look what's happening, We'll just go around every 4 years.
I mean, that's from his mouth. That's not somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll just go around every 4 years and hand out some trinkets, like here's affirmative action, here's school.
Right.
All this stuff that they bought, they actually believed, you know.
And Ray, it's a real disservice with all that kind of, like you mentioned, affirmative action. Why not treat everybody the same? Then you're equal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start giving this group because they're this color, or this group because they're this religion, or this group because of their heritage.
You would not believe the arguments I had when I was in college when affirmative action came out. I said, they were all jumping at the bits to have a part of it. Oh, this is going to make us equal to whites. Are you insane? You're already equal to whites. I didn't want affirmative action as an 18-year-old college student, and I certainly wouldn't want it today because I'm just as good and I'm just as qualified as anyone else.
Ray, you've got it right, and it's amazing that it's so few people that did get it right.
That's the sad part.
Because there's nothing more unequal than trying to make everybody equal.
Thank you. Great statement, Gary. Hang on, we're going to take a little break here. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in 2 and 2.
'Cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
I'm back with my good buddy Gary Miguel. Let me say something to you. And we've talked each week about doing your own due diligence and finding out for yourself. It's important that you do your due diligence. If you're a millennial, and maybe you're straddling the fence, maybe you're a longtime Democrat, and you feel like you owe your allegiance to that party. You owe your allegiance to yourself. That's who you owe the allegiance to, you. So do your due diligence. Find out what's going on. This country is starting to change. Americans are starting to wake up, and smell the coffee. And believe me, it's old-fashioned Folgers. We're headed in the right direction. Gary?
Yeah, these rallies keep getting bigger and bigger. They
Absolutely.
Keep getting more boisterous, and people are really coming out and thinking they are part of making this thing work.
You pointed it out a long time ago, and on several shows ago, the fact that Hillary Clinton's crowds are 600, 1,000 at best. Donald Trump just the other day played to 30,000
Right,
people.
right.
That's got to tell us something that this thing is changing. You're not going to hear it in the media, okay? We know what's happening there, so you're not going to hear it, you know? Pay attention to what's going on in this country, and I think you'll make a very informed decision.
And what's important to think of that, Donald Trump, it's not because of Donald Trump in the sense that he is the messenger.
That's right.
And he says it all the time. It's you, right? So it's the American people that we're seeing this big change, which Trump just said it, I heard him this morning say, he says, man, the American people are energized. And he says, that's my biggest surprise is how smart the American people.
You know, Gary and I have said it before, you know, can you imagine the power of this country if it's returned to the will
Exactly.
of the people? What else do you need except the will of the people? You know, we run everything. It's the will of the people.
And isn't it interesting, no matter where you go, you talk to people and you go to say to Idaho or something, and you talk to the people and you say, my God, they think just like I do. Well, why shouldn't they? They're Americans, aren't they?
Absolutely.
They got the same value, but you wouldn't know it by listening to the liberal press.
I wear this shirt every day,
Yeah.
and every day I now have, I think, 15, 16 of these. I wear it on my show every day. I wear it to my business. I wear it to every place that I go. And every single day, Gary, not every other day, every single day, somebody steps up and shakes my hand and says, I like your shirt.
Yeah.
Every day. And sometimes 5 or 6. You know, I don't see any Hillary banners. I don't see any Hillary bumper stickers, but I see Donald Trump's all over Fresno, all over the Central California. I do business in the Bay Area. You would not believe when we went up the other day how many Donald Trump signs I saw everywhere. And the other day, driving out in the country, I mean, way out in the middle of nowhere, I stopped and took a picture of it. There's a Donald Trump sign. That made me feel so good, you know.
And you know, that you can't believe the number of signs that people have in their house. They're afraid to put them out because they're going to get vandalized.
Sandra has a neighbor, wonderful man. He's been on my show, Gary Miguel. He put his sign out, and it's been vandalized now 2 or 3 times. So he does that. He puts it inside and he puts it back out. And I've talked to several other people, and they do the same thing.
Yeah.
They put it out during the daytime. They put it away at night.
Well, those vandals and those protesters, now we know they were paid. Can you imagine that?
Absolutely.
I mean, that
It's
right
just-
there ought to
yeah.
be enough. I mean,
That should be enough now for people to
put
say,
people in jail for crying out loud because you're trying to interfere with democracy, which is what this country's about. Isn't that something?
Gary, we both know. The world knows. Hillary Clinton should be behind bars now. I mean, she's been protected. It's like there's one set of laws for everybody else. There's another one for Hillary Clinton because she's above the law. Anytime you can influence the head of the FBI, the head of the Justice Department, we're talking about Comey, I'll say it out loud, Comey and Loretta Lynch, anytime you can influence those people to get away with breaking the law, you are in
Well, she-
effect above the law.
Well,
and she is.
corrupts it, right?
Yes.
Okay, now think about this. Okay, well, she's a liar. We know we've been through all that, right? There's another thing she is. She's evil, and that scares people.
You know, that's what's exciting about now. We've got 12 days left, and people are starting to realize what an awful person Hillary Clinton is.
My God, Ray, when you're talking about, like, I think it was the last debate or something, abortion, a 9-month-old baby, which is they are ripped out of the womb and they are taken apart. They put a hole through their skull,
Oh, my
suck
gosh.
out the brains, and now they sell their body parts of that little baby. She has no problem with that.
No, and she sits around and talks about her grandchildren.
I mean,
Today, with Michelle Obama, she
and
was
you know
talking
what the
about
percentage of the aborted babies that are going through that?
how many?
I don't know the percentage. I'm going to say this. Of that, the percentage, the majority are black babies.
I didn't know that.
No,
You just taught me something.
Yeah.
I did not know that. But it doesn't matter.
It
They're
doesn't
babies,
matter,
you know.
but I'm just
Yeah,
saying. Well,
but-
if
yeah.
in the world, if I'm black, why in the world am I voting for somebody like
Oh,
that?
yeah.
I mean, she's
Point
evil.
well taken.
You know,
In more ways than one, believe me.
and I think that she has, she's put a fear in a lot of people because she orchestrated the killing of Gaddafi, and she armed those people, the rebels that killed Gaddafi. Well, Gaddafi's no saint, just like
of course he isn't.
Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
But you know,
was
Libya
he?
had one of the highest standards of living in the Mideast, the people. She gets Gaddafi killed, and she armed these people. Guess who the people that she armed? ISIS.
Oh.
Libya now is controlled by ISIS.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, her
And she laughed about it.
She was Secretary of State when Barack made that choice to pull the people out, and then ISIS raid. They don't want to admit that. We are in trouble with ISIS. There's a fear that runs across this country.
Oh, sure.
And it's a fear that runs across the world, ladies and gentlemen, and it's those Islamic idiots called ISIS. You know, we don't know when they're going to strike. And Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are directly responsible for ISIS. You have to say it. You have to, you know, it's a fact. They don't want to admit it. They will never admit it.
Well, he
but
won't
it
even
is a
call it.
fact.
He won't even call for it.
He won't even say
and she
it.
won't either.
Islamic, radical Islamic terrorists.
Yeah.
He won't even say the word.
Right.
What does that tell you?
But I mean, you look at the arms that she supplied, and the arm dealer, they try to lay it off on him, and he's getting ready to go to trial that Wednesday. On Tuesday, Obama canceled the trial
You know, the only thing
because he'd bring in they'd all get sucked into that web, you know.
You know, people, like you said, and thank goodness you said it. You said it long before I did about people waking up, you know.
Yeah.
And people are taking a good look at the Obama administration that she endorses, by the way, and they're starting to realize, oh, my goodness, I'm going to have 8 more years, if it lasts, like you said, of this, if this woman is elected. They're starting to wake up and say, oh, my goodness. You know, the only thing that the liberal leftist has against Donald Trump, the main thing, is the fact that he had some terrible encounters with women, you know, and like you and I said.
But are they really any different than anybody? I mean, God.
You know, but even
I
if
know
you
a lot
take
of
that,
people.
even if you take that, are you
Yeah.
going to allow this country to continue to be led down the wrong path because Donald Trump made a mistake like a lot of other people? And like we said before, we don't endorse, we don't advocate what Donald Trump did, not at all. But
If in fact he did that.
if in fact he did it,
Now,
if in fact he,
now Hillary Clinton's husband, who she enabled and who she threatened the women, look what he did to women.
and it's still coming out about him.
And
you
it-
know?
it- yeah, it's still
but
coming out.
Basically, what I'm saying is how insignificant is that, ladies and gentlemen? How insignificant is that, as opposed to putting this country in the right direction, which is what he's trying
That's right,
to do.
Ray. And the fact is, if so insignificant in terms of the big picture,
Absolutely,
there's something wrong with you. You can't see that.
you've got to see
What are
it.
you going to do? You know, you're sitting in a salt mine shoveling salt, and you say, "Why are you here? Why are you here?" "Oh, I couldn't stand that other guy." Who'd you vote for? Well, I would. And you look where we are. We're here in this salt mine,
yeah.
digging salt. He said, "Why did you vote that way?" He says, "Well, I can't stand somebody using that P word."
Oh, for crying out loud!
So he's going to dig salt for it. And
Yeah.
that's what we're talking
Basically,
about.
that's what we're talking about.
It is. I mean, if you break it all down, why are they on that? Because that's all they got.
That's it. They have nothing else except
What-
Donald Trump's indiscretion, so to speak.
Well, what if you put Donald where Hillary is, and then had all that on Donald that Hillary has on Hillary? My God, you think?
Good point. Great point. You know.
Do you think for a moment he wouldn't even make it to the first line to sign to become president?
You
We're
like
talking
it-
about president of the United States. If you take everything that Hillary had, everything, and make it Donald Trump, and then ask yourself, would you vote for that person? Oh
Good
my
point.
God, I wouldn't even. My God, no. I says I'd put him in jail. I says, well, then why are you voting for that person to be president of the United States?
And we talk about this all the time, and I don't want to
Almighty.
dwell on it. I want to dwell on the fact that you do your due diligence and go and vote for Donald Trump on 12 days from now. But I just can't help thinking, Gary, my goodness, it gets worse daily about this woman. It gets worse daily. Benghazi should have been enough.
Oh,
the
my.
emails should have been enough. Those 2 things alone should have been enough. But there are countless other things.
Well, how about the state? How about the way she ran the State Department?
Well, of course.
That should have been
Absolutely.
enough.
That should have been enough. You think, can you say the word, obstruction of justice about 50 times? My goodness. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. It does not take a quantum physicist
why
to
does
get
it-
on top of this.
Why does it take a genius to sit there and look and see that she's making $250,000 as Secretary of State and amassing in 1 year $250 million?
You're right. It does not take a genius
And then
to
you
figure
start
that out.
looking at what's happening. I mean, she was controlling, like, for instance, I'll use Gaddafi. Sure, I mean, the guy's not a saint and all that. Neither was Hussein.
Mm-hmm.
But compared to where we are now, and the people, the millions of people that's been killed because of Hillary's involvement, indirectly, the babies, 500,000 babies were killed in Syria, I guess it was, or something like that, because of.
You and I talked about look. Let's take ISIS. Let's take a second here
Yeah.
and talk about ISIS. You and I talked about the millions of people that have been killed, not Americans,
Right,
Which
right,
is,
right.
the worst for me,
Right.
and not even domestic, say Europeans,
Right.
But the people in the Mideast,
Right.
There's been thousands of people killed because of what Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton did. I can't even
I know.
begin to. It gets me so upset.
Well,
I mean.
and then you go into those. Just I've heard it several times. Is 500,000 children died because of a policy decision based on supplying food. And Madeleine Albright, she said, "Oh, that's a small price to pay. That's all right, but how about if it's your kid?"
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at Benghazi and look at her statement.
Oh.
Look at her statement. What difference does it matter now? Well, let me tell you something, Hillary Clinton. It makes a lot of difference to the people of Benghazi, to the mothers of those soldiers that were killed. There were 500 calls that went out for help. They ignored every one of them.
Right.
This is America. This is an American Secretary of State guilty for that.
She has no conscience, and she's an evil woman. I don't know how else you can put it.
I'm glad you put it that way because
Because
that's exactly
if you think
what
about
she is.
it, how else would somebody be if not evil that would allow and cause and create the kind of thing all the way to everything she does,
And then lie about it.
and
Totally.
then lie about it. In fact, she lied about it so much she lies on lies, and people are getting immune to it.
You know, my grandmother had a saying, and I've said it before, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the American people are sick and tired of,
Right.
of what's happening with this government, and they're starting to wake up. Please, if you're a millennial, like I said, if you're a longtime Democrat, do your due diligence. Find out exactly what's happening in this country and vote appropriately 12 days from now. Let's put Donald Trump in the White House. Let's change the direction of this country because we're spiraling, and we're spiraling downward. And Gary would know something about that. He's a pilot. We're spiraling downward.
Well, the thing about it, we got a chance though to stop the spiral, don't we?
Yes, we do, and we will stop it. It
See,
will stop.
and what's important about that is it's everybody has a part of it.
I got to restate my
know.
statement that I said the day the election's on a Tuesday on the 8th. Well, on the 10th, I'm going to sit here with Gary, and I'm going to tell you something that Donald Trump won't tell you. He's not going to say, I told you so. I'm going to say, I told you so. Donald Trump just got elected.
Yeah.
He's going to win this election.
And the important thing is it's not Donald Trump that wins, it's the American people.
It's the
that
American
win.
people. The American people are too smart not to.
Now, when
Gary,
Hillary
that's what
wins,
I'm counting on.
let's think about it. If Donald Trump wins, the American people win because he doesn't need this.
No.
So
He's never needed
In
it.
fact, it's going to be a lesser life in a sense if he becomes president because it's got a lot more responsibility that he has already, and he doesn't really need. Well, he doesn't need it
No,
except to
not
save
at all.
people. So the people win. Let's see who wins if Hillary wins.
No one wins. We know that for a fact. No
I-
one wins. Everyone loses if Hillary Clinton gets elected.
Except the establishment elite
Yeah.
that's been winning on every election since the 60s.
Absolutely.
Now we're talking about the puppet players.
Yeah.
Hillary's on a string. Obama's on a string. Let's take Obama. What is his claim to doing anything? He was a community organizer.
Explain what that is, Gary.
Well, a community organizer, best way for me to explain, it's a community agitator.
Good point.
He's never owned a business. He's never made a payroll.
Neither has
has
she.
she. And they've just been living off like slugs,
Living off the government.
living off the government, like slugs attached to a whale.
Unbelievable.
And that people are sitting there, and we keep voting for these kind of people because of the baubles and beads.
Absolutely.
Because it takes responsibility. And Jefferson said that. If you ever had a chance to go to Washington, D.C., those that haven't, you need to. I wish every American would have to go to Washington D.C. I went for 2 weeks to study all that I could about.
I've been there for a week and it wasn't long enough.
It's not long enough. I agree, but you do agree that every American should go because it
Absolutely,
does
you
change
should.
it.
You should go to the
So
sea.
I was on that. I read a book there at that time. Read several, but Thomas Jefferson said three things that really struck me, and one of them was the fact that he'd studied different types of governments before deciding what government we were going to have, which we ended up with a republic.
Yes.
Okay, and not a pure democracy. We had representative and democracy. There's a reason why that won't work, but nevertheless, a free country requires a certain amount of intelligentsia of the people that are voting.
Certainly it does.
And that's why they had the restrictions on voting the way they did at that time, which worked at that time. And as we've grown, things have changed, right? But if you think about it, that was the average democracy would last maybe 200, 250 years, which is about where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's about where we are because I'll guarantee you, if Hillary's elected, it's over
Yo, sure it is.
in a heartbeat.
Oh, please.
It'll be
listen
like
to that.
Venezuela. And I got a friend of mine played baseball in Venezuela, and he was telling me, he says, I talked to those people back then, and they thought communism would be okay, like Cuba, they were thinking for
Oh,
this.
of course, because they were brainwashed. For
They were
one thing.
brainwashed. Now what are they? They're in forced labor. They're in forced labor.
What's one of the most prosperous nations
Exactly.
on the planet?
That's
you know?
right. And I got friends I meet with for coffee, and they're illegals originally, but they're legal now. But anyway, they came across, swam the river, and came over here, and they said, Mexico should be one of the richest countries in the world, which it should. They got fabulous labor, which we've mentioned, right, and which we have. Okay, and he says, I come up here to escape a corrupt government.
Sure.
And that's why Mexico is like it is. It's not because of lack of resources and lack of the right people.
Because the government
Because
is
the
corrupt.
government is corrupt. Now I've been up here now for 6 years, and I'm starting to see this government just like the one I left. And he said, "What am I supposed to do? Go to Canada?"
Oh, my goodness.
You see what I mean? They're observing that, and he said, "My God, I came here and I started seeing in the last 6 years what's going on, and this government is as corrupt."
I am so glad
that
intelligent Americans are waking up, and we see this in the polls. That's what's happening.
Right.
We've got the lead. People are starting to look at things, and like we say, do your due diligence. Take a look at what's going on in this country. Take a really good look at Hillary Clinton. Take a really good look at what this woman has gotten away with.
Yeah, and a vote for Trump is a vote for yourself.
Absolutely. Great point. It is definitely a vote for yourself.
And just picture yourself as like he does. He said each and every American is important by our vote, and think and as far as the outcome, think about who you're really voting for. And
Let me make a plea again to American blacks, to American whites, to all American so-called minorities. Let me make a plea. The present administration had a chance to do a lot of things. Here you have an African-American president who had a chance to change the world, we are worse in race relations, Gary, than we've ever been in this country.
He's a divider,
Yeah,
agitator.
and that's what they've divided, because that's what they do. They divide and conquer, and that's obviously what's happening. Unemployment in this country has gone up 2.5 times, and 3.5 times amongst American blacks in this country. 3.5 times, Housing is at a 45-year low, and among blacks, it's even worse.
And I think that he community organizer was not a community organizer, and he believes in division.
Sure.
Notice who he back. Does he back the police? Does he back?
No.
Part of the reason that communism succeed in become communism, or style of that, is by agitation gone between the different groups of people.
We have a caller? Oh, we have a caller. Great. Go ahead. Did we lose him, Robert? Go ahead, caller. We're waiting on you.
Hello?
Hello? But we'll apologize for that. We're having a little difficulty. Perhaps they'll call back. And caller, if you can hear us, call back. We'd love to know. We'd love to hear your voice. That's why we're here. So please, maybe redial your number, maybe turn your phone down, but call back. We'd like to hear your voice. That's why we're here. Gary?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that the people that are really looking at it hard right now, including millennials, when you get down,
It's starting to change. You can see
well,
it.
let's face it, we all hate to be wrong, but with humility, you may have to humble yourself a little bit. Say, I was for Clinton, but I've changed, and I know I was this.
Die-hearted Democrats.
But
can
let me
make
tell you
this.
what humble is. Humble is power if used right.
Okay, I think we have our caller now. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Is this the Ray Johns?
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir. Hey, I was just wondering what has happened to the United States of America that I grew up in. The country where the rulers and the leaders follow the law and set examples instead of are above the law and completely destroy the Constitution and the republic that we once had and we held so dear.
I'm glad you asked that question. That is a great question, and thank you, sir, and welcome to the show. It is a sad thing. It's a really, really sad. Do you think our forefathers, the founding fathers of this country, would turn over in their grave if they knew the situation of this country today? That is a great. And it's all done in the name of greed. That's what it's about. It's greed. This present administration, Barack Obama, who is by far the worst president in my lifetime ever, like Ronald Reagan is the greatest, he is by far the worst. And Hillary Clinton are leading this country down the path of destruction. Great question, young man. Great question.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, they would talk about the John Birch Society, and the John Birch Society was pointing out that this was coming, and everybody thought that they were so radical, right-wing.
Racist. I remember they called them racist, and they were not.
They were talking about communism and socialism coming to America, and everybody said, "Oh, that couldn't happen." And now you got a guy like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton that are avid socialists,
Absolutely.
and they're running us into the ground.
You think we ought to throw Barack Obama in there with that duo? I do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And
Hillary
William
Clinton.
Jefferson
And Hillary
Clinton
Clinton.
and the whole bunch.
Yes, all of them.
Well, this started. It really got going. I remember they had the problem. I want to say in the late 40s or early 50s of communism. But that's the first time I heard about was when Hollywood. They had people that were, communists, and but it really started kicking into gear in the 60s, where we started in our schools changing the way we educate our kids, and that the education started going from a centralized area, which is like Common Core, Washington Federal, dictating the education, as opposed to local school boards, which is what Trump wants to get back to. And this is a small process of I call it indoctrination over a period of time. And we read that one day here. There's 8 steps that it goes through, and it's about a 60-year process. And if you go, like you said, if you go to the school today, at a classroom today, and this classroom you spent in, you wouldn't recognize it as being
Not
a
at all.
classroom.
Not at all. Young man, what do you think of the situation right now as far as the schools? I mean, they don't recite the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. We have 2 languages for just about everything, like the ballot is a perfect example. This is America, for crying out loud. Why should we have to compromise? Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, we should not. When I was in school, we stood, we saluted the flag,
Absolutely.
we repeated the Pledge of Allegiance every morning before school, and we even had a prayer. And I'm only 59 years old, and we were taught to respect our leaders. And it was not a perfect world back then, but we knew that we had the greatest country in the world, and now our country is an embarrassment all over the world.
It is. Our enemies don't fear us, and our allies don't believe us. They don't trust us. How sad is that?
And another thing too, the word patriotism got replaced by the word me, me,
That's right.
and that sacrifices that were required that people
I'm going to
did
write
then.
in Ray Johns for president.
Hey, I can always say I got a vote.
There
Thank
you go.
Hey, who's with me?
But you know what? I mean, seriously, as far as qualifications for what we have with Obama, obviously, at least Ray's got sense enough to and is patriotic enough. He know who to get to run what. And press what
Absolutely.
button. I mean,
One
So-
thing, I'll get this young man to be my running mate or something.
There you go.
know? He sounds like a very intelligent young man. Listen,
Absolutely.
we certainly
I'll be your
appreciate-
VP, Ray. You know who this is, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I've got to tell everybody, I'm glad he called in. This is my business partner, Guy Graham. What a great man this guy
Hey.
is. Oh, yeah, he's super. You talk about a patriot, he is that. His whole family.
he sound like it.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about him since I got him on the line.
Yeah.
He has 8 children. A lot of them are special needs children.
Wow.
And he lives in a wonderful place. I'm not going to tell you where he lives, but he lives in a wonderful place. He's got a wife that's unbelievable. I mean, and their children are just great. This man is a true American in every sense of the word. Every sense of the word. I love and respect this man more than anybody I know on the face of the earth. He's a great man. Guy, thank you for calling in, buddy. Great question.
Well, thanks for the kind words, Ray. I'm blessed beyond possibility. I just have no comprehension of how much God has blessed me and my family, and it's all God.
I'm blessed
It really
for knowing
is.
you and having the kind of business partner that you are. We have a great relationship.
Great.
We laugh all day long at business. It's just wonderful. I love it. I have never had so much fun owning a business until I met this man.
Can you imagine if everybody had the attitude?
Absolutely. He's got a great attitude.
Well, I mean,
you know?
my God, you're actually, you got a country that, by God, I'm pretty darn proud of.
Boy, I wish we had about 18 trillion more people like Guy.
Yeah.
Guy, thank you for the call in, buddy.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll let you get back to your show, brother. You take care.
Thank you, buddy. Very good call.
Yeah,
That was a nice surprise for me. Great surprise.
great. That's great. I'll tell you what is great is you really feel, you say, okay, that's the first time I heard his voice, obviously, but you really feel the patriotism, the concern.
Oh, we
And,
talk about it every
you know-
day, and he and I have the same views. I mean, he feels about Hillary the same way we all do.
Well,
you know.
there's a lot of them that are starting to understand that maybe I better have that view too.
Hey, we're small. Guy and I are
Right.
small business owners. We can't afford Hillary Clinton. We cannot afford this woman.
But
you know?
I mean,
We're-
when you just consider it. Okay, you just describe briefly that guy. Now look at you, look who you have to look up to. If you're somebody, you'd say, well, I'd like to be like. Do you want to be like somebody like Hillary Clinton that lies and corrupt and all that? It's crazy.
Okay, we've got to take a break. I think I've gone past it. Have so much fun, and then Guy called in. We're having
I
even
know.
more fun, and I forget all about the time. So we're going to take a break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in 2 and 2 with my great guest, Gary Miguel. And Gary just made a statement. Gary, you go ahead and say what you said about Guy. Guy, I hope you're listening. I hope you hear this.
Well, I mean, when you listen to Guy, obviously that's the epitome of what you think America should be.
Absolutely.
All right. So then, with your vote, why wouldn't you vote for him through Donald Trump as the messenger? Instead, why are you voting for Hillary, which represents everything the opposite?
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense.
I mean, Lord, that's
We've unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening today. We've used up most of our time. I'm going to ask Gary, like I do every week, to come back.
okay, sure will.
Good,
Yeah.
good. And let me say this, and every week we do a little thing to think about, and we say basically the same thing because I think it's so important. We've lost 4 law enforcement officers in California in the last month, Please, when you see a law enforcement officer, go up and shake his hand and tell him how proud we are of him, and tell him that we appreciate everything they do because they do a thankless job for a minimal amount of money. And God bless them. We need them. They're very, very important to me. So in closing, let me say, until we meet next Thursday, joyously like next Thursday, heaven's blessings.
CentralValleyTalk.com